Are you an ambitious leader ready to break through limiting beliefs, align with your purpose, and thrive in your career without sacrificing your well being or postponing your true desires? I'm Diana Ordonez, certified high performance coach and your host. Each week, we'll dive into actionable insights and research based strategies to help you unlock clarity, build unshakable confidence, and take courageous action toward a life of impact and fulfillment. If you're ready to overcome fear, embrace growth, and step boldly into your next level, you're in the right place. Let's create a life filled with courage and purpose together. Welcome back, everybody, to Courage and Purpose. I'm so excited. I am joined today by Renee Bryant, who is just a wonderful spirit and has so many great insights for you as it relates to her business. She is the owner of PlayRx. And just by the name, you know that we're going to be having some fun on today's call. So why don't you share with us, Renee, what is PlayRx?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, PlayRx is an LLC that I founded about a year and a half ago that is dedicated to bringing play to adults. I have this vision of essentially taking play and having it treated as seriously as nutrition and exercise in terms of the health and wellness communities. It's crazy to me that our society is so not up to speed with the science, which doesn't even have to exist. It's something that's so intuitive. We know how great play is when we feel it in our bodies. And it's wild to me that we don't have spaces in adult life that allow the opportunity for us to play as adults in an adult appropriate way. And a lot of adults might have things that they do that are playful, but they're decreasing every year. We just don't, we have more entertainment and less play than ever. And so my mission is to essentially bring that to adults by facilitating these play and creativity workshops that I host, and also by providing resources for people that they can use on their own.
I love that. You said something that really drew my attention. You said we have a lot of entertainment and not enough play. So tell us about the difference between entertainment and play.
Yeah,
I think,
it's a great question, and we're really obsessed with it. I think specifically in the United States, it's very vogue to be entertained. You get to sort of play this role of the Hollywood celebrity, which is very popular and has been since the 30s, 1920s. We've got sort of this obsession with consumption. So
mm,
our play history in America is kind of grim, unfortunately. We came here, the settlers, meaning the white people, right? The sort of Puritans came to the United States to settle, and they were in a state of stress and trauma from that. And so they were really sort of intensely trying to figure out like how to survive. And they didn't have a lot of room or time for play. And it became also a part of the culture of sort of like Puritan Christianity to sort of say like work is, sort of very godly, and play is can be seen as very sinful and very wasteful. And so
mm,
even like in the early stages before America was even founded, a lot of the people that were starting to, create the United States of America were already in that mindset due to necessity, but also due to culture. And so eventually the United States is founded. We're sort of making our way across the westward expansion. And play is still just not, it's happening, but it's happening often. Like children are allowed to play, like they've got a lot of free time. But then immediately, like they're already getting into labor, industrialization happens, and now our children are sort of like in these factories, and we have to create laws to say, like, actually, we think this is probably not a great idea. And then eventually it sort of turns into our entertainment goes towards wherever the companies with money can sort of use to entertain us. So it became really vogue to like go on vacation, buy a car, drive far away on a long
mm,
drive, buy a television, get the radio, whatever new next best thing was sort of coming out, that became really sort of shoved in our faces as like, you should consume this. This is fun. This is play. But I think the thing that's really sad about consumptive entertainment is that it's passive. Right, to answer your question, entertainment is passive. The the person that's involved with entertainment is in a state of consumption
mm,
rather than a state of action. And play is a complete and total opposite state. It's a state of action where you are actively participating in your external environment. You're making decisions there's risk involved. Things could go really poorly, things could go in your favor. So there's this sense of excitement and anticipation that's being built in the actual activity itself, right? If you think about a kid in the woods and they're sort of exploring and they're like, 5 or 6 years old, there are things that are risky for them while they're exploring that makes this heightened sense of awareness because of that risk. And that really puts you into this state of hyper presence because you're trying to essentially navigate. And that can put you in a flow state, which is also, I think, an element that can be involved in play. It doesn't have to be, but it can be involved in play. Whereas entertainment, you don't have to do anything. You just get to sit there and
Mm.
play and eat and consume. So yeah, I think about them embodied as two very different postures, where like entertainment is sort of like somebody just sort of sitting on a couch and like eating a giant bag of chips, aka media, versus a person that's actively participating in play is going to have like their breastbone up, they're going to have like a stick, they're going to have their eyes like really active and engagedly involved in their surroundings. So it's just a completely different state in the body.
Yeah, it sounds like engaged versus disengaged. And what I love about that is that about everything you said is that you gave it so much context to how it became kind of this prominent way of engaging with our environment is to be either very serious and hardworking or to just be in the, receiving entertainment in this very disengaged, kind of just passive way. I thought that was so fascinating because when I do coaching work, one of the things we talk about a lot is, especially for like high achievers who are often in fight or flight because they've kind of overextended themselves and went into this kind of survival mode, is that it's so interesting that our country is actually founded on a group of people that were operating in survival mode. And then they created a culture that was about working, and then the people that are working and then producing product that entertains, that's being pushed on us. And then like it's really this like cycle of, pursuing the next kind of like dopamine hit to feel good because we're trying to overcompensate for the fact that we're always like in survival mode.
Yeah, it's a really you're putting it really well into the way that I see it. It's a very cyclical sort of sickness where it's like we're trained that we're not valuable if we're not producing something, and then we
Right.
produce it, and then we get exhausted from the producing, and then we're fed entertainment that's created from the production of, everybody working. And then we get even lower baseline dopamine from all of this passive entertainment, and then we're forced to say, you can't be lazy. You have to be working. You're not valuable if you're not working. So we get freaked out and anxious and, in a fight or flight, we go back to working and the cycle just repeats. And so it becomes this formula for burnout
Yeah.
that's really sad, and there are people out there that just naturally do it and they know, and this message like isn't necessarily for them. We're like, well, I go out and I do, all kinds of active things. I have all these really engaging hobbies and really engaging friends and my life is great. It's like, yeah, that's amazing, but that's the minority. Most people are not engaged in those types of activities that really get them into an online state of agency and like feeling truly alive and having that vitality sort of run through their veins. Most people are just completely in this death cycle of burnout where, my little mini conspiracy theory is that I'm like, that's how it's intended, right? Like that's like where we're supposed to be because it really keeps us in this cycle of like the structure of our culture is you've got to be working. You have to be working. There's nothing wrong with working. I love this quote, by the way, from Dr. Stuart Brown, who's the founder of the National Institute for Play, and has been one of the main play researchers for the last 40 years. He says, like, play is not the opposite of work. The opposite of play is not work, it's depression. You can
Mm.
be in a state of play while working on something extremely meaningful, exciting. Play is active. So, of course, play and work are similar to one another. It's not as if like work is the devil and
Mm.
play is the angel. It's that when you're producing something and it doesn't have internal or intrinsic value to you, and then you're you get tired and then you ingest and consume media and entertainment, that lowers your baseline dopamine and it makes you more tired to go out and produce. And it's just sort of like in this stuck, stagnant place. Whereas play and meaningful work are this place of like true, like there's an opening to a person when they get into that state that's really full of growth and transformation. So like I don't want people to be like, "Oh, she thinks we should just stop working." No, 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 no. I think we should add play to our work so that work can become more meaningful.
Yeah, I love that. I love because one of the coaching questions I often use is like sometimes people find themselves stuck just because they see the process of whatever it is that they want to engage in or do or change or habit that they want to adopt is like, how can you make the process more fun?
Yeah.
Right? It's not like don't do the thing that's hard. It's like, how can you, like shift your way that you're engaging with it to be like more joyful, more interesting, more, playful. And what you said that also kind of like drew me in is also you said, well, there are those exceptions to this rule where they're listening and they're saying, well, I do all these things. But also as high achievers, like now that are becoming more aware of our need for wellness and so forth, it's all about the intention, right? As we ask ourselves, well, how do we make it more fun and all that? It's also like, okay, well, if yoga on your list is another like to-do item that you just feel like you
Right.
got to cross off,
Right. That's so true.
right? Like I just
Yeah.
gotta, I gotta go to my yoga class and I gotta do this fitness class and it's all feeling very like intense
Yeah.
or serious anyway because the intention is I have to or I must not like I get to or I want to or yeah. And so it is I do hear an intention behind how you want to engage in it and to be very present in it. And I think if you're in survival mode that can be very challenging. So, what are some of the things that you do to like bring that presence to people that are struggling to engage in play, especially like I know for myself, even with my daughter, like kids naturally want to play and she knows I struggle with it. So, what are some things that people can do to kind of ease that barrier between play and the little person inside us that naturally knows how to play and we just haven't connected with it in so long.
It's the number one question. It's the question. Like you're asking the ultimate question. I think for before I sort of give an answer, I will say like I'm learning and learning and learning so much more every year that I'm alive on this planet, how different people are and how what I've done and what my personal play journey is not going to be a one size fits all type of situation. Even though I would love to be able to say, like, this is what I did, like, everyone do it. It might work for you. It might work for some people, but there are so many different ways to be a person and so many different blocks and so many different associations and inner belief systems and all this kind of stuff where I think that the number one thing that I can say that I think can kind of be a catch-all is a play journey has to be authentic. It has to be like very, very true for that individual. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be everybody else's. And I think that in a world where we're like already very hyper individual, sort of in our thinking in the West, that's something that I think a lot of people can understand and latch onto of like, okay, this is like my sort of journey to understand. But I do think there are some things that could potentially help a lot of people. One of them, so for my play journey, the thing that I really needed before I was able to play because I've got a really harsh inner critic. And that inner critic is always telling me, like you said, like should, must, have to.
Mm.
And it's not fun because I don't have a great relationship with my inner critic. The inner critic is very much somebody that I don't like. And so when the inner critic tells me what to do, even if it's good for me, I don't want to listen to it because I just want to rebel. I'm like, don't tell me what to do. So then I have this sort of inner war within myself. But what I needed before I could sort of get through my inner critic stuff and get to a place where I was playing was I actually read Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way probably about 8 years ago, right after I went through a divorce. And I was really sort of needing an identity, like I needed something to just sort of like figure out who I was, because you sort of lose your identity after something like that. And it really asks you to slow down and listen to sort of this inner voice that's probably going to sound like a whisper, and then
Mm.
sort of pull that inner whisper out and give it a stage and really give it a lot of time and attention. And that slowing down and that sort of really listening to like the deep unconscious desires of the heart, that was step one. Because the moment that I had prepared for, I don't know, months or maybe even at that point a year of doing my daily journal, like my artist pages, doing my artist dates, really trying to like connect with myself. And there was this moment where I think I had sort of like the aha of like, I know how to get here again. I've done it. And now I know how to go back. It was I was hiking on a mountain right across the street from my apartment. And I heard this inner voice that was like, jump on that rock. And I was like, okay, well, because I've been doing all this work for like the past year, I know what you are. I'm so glad you're here. I'm actually going to listen to you, so you like look around. You're like, is anybody here? Like, am I going to get like judged by anybody? And I like jumped on the rock. And then it was like, jump on 10 more. And I was like, okay. And so, like, I'd never done anything like that before. And so I just started like, jump, 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 jump. And all of a sudden, this massive wave of euphoria hit my body as if it was like, you did it. You did what we wanted. Like, you finally listened to us for the first time in a century. I just completely overwhelmed my nervous system and I couldn't stop laughing. And then I sort of was like, okay, I want more, like give me more. And it was like, now I want you to like, like act like a beaver and I want you to like hustle this direction. And then I want you to side shuffle and then I want you to jump again. And then I remember at one point it was kind of like I was begging for it and the voice kind of started to disappear. And I was like,
Mm.
no, like I was having so much fun, like please come back. And I think that moment was the moment that I realized that there was another version of me that truly was hiding, that didn't have permission until I did all of this slowing down and all of this introspection for it to really start to come out and for me to access it. And now, 8 years later, I've got this ability to just sort of be like, oh, there's the voice, that's what it wants. And then you can give it what it wants. And then you get the immediate sort of like euphoria or the results or whatever. And it's really rewarding to be able to have that quick feedback. Whereas 8 years before, if I had tried to do something fun,
Mm.
I wouldn't have felt anything. I would have felt frustrated. I would have felt like it wasn't working. I would have felt broken. There would have been a lot in the way. So, just like you're saying, the number one question is a lot of people are going to try and do something fun, and it's not going to necessarily feel liberating or playful because they've got a lot of inner stuff that truly is blocking that part of themselves for probably very good reasons, probably some kind of self-protection from childhood, an inner belief that needed to exist in order to survive. Like it's there for a very good reason. We don't want to demonize it at all whatsoever, but it's probably there if there's a struggle. And so that introspective work for me was the answer. Like go deep, go slow, take your time, pull this like dark stuff out, kind of in a weird way, take your, therapy really seriously. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, now it's time. Once the stuff starts bubbling up, like we can start doing it. But for me, the inner phrase that I use all the time is do what you want. Do what you really want to do. Like, don't do what you think you should do, what society
Mm.
thinks is play. Like, you really have to listen to what you love doing, even if it doesn't make any sense. So, Dr. Stuart Brown also talks about this, but he talks about play personalities and play history. Everybody has a unique set of play personalities. You might have one, you might have four, but you've got things that you particularly like to play with. You might like to play with your hands. You might like to play, with your body. You might like to play with your voice. There are things you might genuinely like to do. And so you can look back at your play history from your childhood and use that as kind of like a guide as to where maybe your play personality resides. So when I looked back and I did a play history, which Dr. Stuart Brown's book, which is called Play, he has you do kind of a little play history demo with yourself where you like write down like what were the things that made you feel like alive, like completely online when you were a kid. Like remember those memories. Thank God they're core memories usually because they make you feel so alive that luckily you'll probably remember them, which is the good news. And when you go back into those memories, like for me, I was like, I'm on the floor of a JC Penney's. I'm picking up all of these tiny beads. I'm so excited that a dress on the rack broke and all of the beads, like colored beads, fell on the floor. And I'm like excitedly collecting them and putting them in this little box that I have that's wooden. And I feel like I've just hit the like a treasure trove, like I'm a little dragon and I'm just like collecting all my treasure. And I thought about it and I was like, I did that a lot. I was constantly collecting things that I thought were pretty and putting them in this box when I was really little, like 4 or 5 years old. And I like grow up, right? And I didn't, didn't connect it till I read this book. I was like, oh, that's like literally what I do. Like I collect stuff. Like I'm a collector. Like I collect jewels, I collect gems, I collect like clothes, I collect furniture, I collect all kinds of stuff. And so it became obvious to me, like, oh, my play style is a collector. Like you read it, and I was like, that's boring. Glad I'm not that one. And then you do your play history, and you're like, oh, actually, just kidding. I'm a collector. Because I'm like I'm not identifying with Jay Leno who's like collecting all of these cars and putting them in the desert. Like I don't collect pennies. I'm not lame. Like, like I remember thinking that. And then when you do your play history, you discover like, oh, actually I forgot. And then cool, I'm actually playing as an adult when I go to the thrift store. And there's
Hmm.
kind of this openness that happens where you're like, oh, it doesn't have to be this like jumping out of airplanes, like playing volleyball. Like you don't have to fit the stereotype that you think play is supposed to be. Right. And for some people, like they look back and they're like, whoa, I climbed a lot of trees as a kid. And then the question would be for them, when was the last time you moved your body in a way that made you feel that way? And they're like, yeah,
Hmm.
sometimes I feel like that in yoga, but not really. And God, I would love to do dance. You're like, sign up for a dance class, do it tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
so that I think can be really useful is to kind of realize you already have a tendency towards a certain type of play that can be translated into an adult appropriate way if you can figure out what you did as a kid.
Oh, I have so many questions for you because, well, first of all, as I'm listening to you, my daughter's a collector too.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I didn't realize. She also just loves to like play pretend with little characters, right? And there was so much like judgment for myself that I'm like, I can't like I don't know how to do that, right? Like I don't know how to engage in that type of play with you with either of those actually. It's almost like I don't know, maybe there is a term for this, but like our play personalities were like not compatible or something.
It's very possible.
And what do you do like when that happens and you want to connect better with your child? Because for me, it was, and I still do it. And so now I'm like, oh, I have all this judgment about whether or not I can play, but it's just that what I prefer, how I prefer to play is just different. Because like I still do climb trees. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like, oh, that looks like it's gonna be so fun to climb, and I'll just climb it. But I guess I didn't perceive it to be just the avenue that I prefer for play, and that was okay. And I did join a dance class, right? And so, and in some ways, I do try to connect with her doing some of those things. But how can I like kind of meet her where she's at so that I can connect better with her?
Yeah, so the good news is that play is self-led. So play that's truly play is going to be something that is pleasurable and enjoyable for the individual engaging in it, whether or not other people join in.
Okay.
But as a parent to a child, right, as a teacher, this stuff can be really important to kind of pull in what I know a little bit about teaching. And even though I'm not a parent, right? So again, take it with a grain of salt. But there's a certain amount of just needing to be seen, just needing to be witnessed, usually especially with the results. So for example, if she's collecting all of these little things, I remember as a kid, the thing that I wanted so badly was for someone to look at my treasure box and for them to be like, wow, look at this. I noticed that this is really shiny. I noticed that this is the most beautiful color blue. I noticed this, and then all of a sudden I'm just like having the best time and I'm like, yeah, okay, great. And then I want to take my box and I want to keep going and I want to keep collecting and I'm good. I got the validation I needed. I felt really seen for my collection and now I'm going to go collect more because just gave me an energy of validation that I can carry with me into the next like play cycle. And with something like, if she's a storyteller, which I'm sort of hearing maybe there's a little bit of an element of storytelling, it could be director, there's storyteller, there's director. There's also, again, this could be a part of the collecting thing where it's just like, I have this thing, I'm going to make them play together. So that could be just object play. But if there's a storytelling element involved or a directing element involved, then, if she comes up with a little story, then again, give her a platform to share the story and be like, here's my story, mom. Like, here's what it is. Here's the story, la, 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 the end. And everyone bows. And then you're like, wow, I noticed that this character said this kind thing to this person. And I noticed that this character changed their mind, in act two or, whatever. And then all of a sudden, same thing. They feel validated, they feel seen, and then they take that massive wave of positive energy into the next play cycle. So the good news is for the majority, you don't have to enter into their world other than to be like a witness or a supportive role. Like you don't have to be like, hey, I'm going to be this character and I'm going to play with you. Let's like do improv together. If that's not your thing, like it can be really
Yeah.
tough to kind of enter into because they can feel that energy, right? So you can be a witness and you can sort of ask for things. You can say, I want to see a 2-minute scene between these two characters. And if she can come up with it on her own and she doesn't need any more prompting, great. But if she's kind of like, okay, I don't really know, you're like, okay, this person, they're angry at this person because they push them in the line to the checkout line at the shopping cart or whatever. And now all of a sudden you've sort of created the stage and then they go off and they can come up with a thing and then come back and present it to you. So if you want to be like an idea prompter or something like that, or an audience supportive role, and then I would find out like what your play styles are. Like what do you, sounds like you're a kinesthete, so you love to climb trees, move your body, like that's a form of play. But you probably have other like play personalities too that you might be able to discover and then sort of like incorporate. But you're right. Sometimes play personalities are not compatible. My cousin loved to climb trees as a kid at my grandma's house. I just sat at the bottom and was depressed.
Oh.
I was not engaged with play with her at all because we weren't the same type, and I was just really sad and intimidated and overwhelmed
Oh.
by the tree. And so that wasn't a bonding thing for us. So you might have to find like where is the overlap if there is any.
Wow, this is fascinating. And because she is a storyteller, and I had all these hangups because she would be like, okay, she would like set the scene and then she would like tell me what all the characters are gonna do and what their names are and all this stuff. And then I was like assigned characters. And then I would like freeze, like I don't know what to do with these characters. Like I don't know what to say or anything. And it sounds like I could just ask her and that would be okay. I kind of had this
Yeah.
judgment that if I couldn't come up with something that I was like failing at the game, you know.
Not at all.
So,
You can ask her for a script. You can push her and be like, "Hey, give me a script so that I can read for this character. I'll read for this character."
okay.
But yeah, if you
And make it
can,
like a movie or a book.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, I still
This,
can't tell if she's doing storytelling or directing or both at the same time, but it's if she's a director, then yeah, it will be more of a challenge for her to give you a script because
uh-huh.
she wants to direct you to do it. But
Yeah.
if she's storytelling stuff, then she can come up with a story and give it to you.
I would probably say she's more of a director because she'll say, "Okay, now you're angry," but then I have to be like, I have to decide, like,
Yeah,
what what she said.
that's great. I
I'm
mean,
like, okay,
it's one of those things where sometimes as a parent, like you can be like, I'm gonna do my best, but you're not gonna maybe enter into a play state, and that's totally fine and totally acceptable. But oftentimes kids just want a stage to feel seen in their state of play, especially when they come up with a product and they want to show it
yeah.
off. That's the
Ugh.
most important time to show up.
I love that. I love that. I think that's a very practical, tool that you're giving us. I think, and then that probably applies to adults too, right? Like, just if you don't share an interest with someone that is, very fascinated by a particular form of play, and you just noticing and helping them be seen in that makes sense. I guess I don't know why in this particular area. I guess because probably I was triggered that that little yucky, voice going, "You're a bad mom." Right? And so that's probably why I didn't connect the two. But that is something that is helpful any with adults or children anytime that, you want someone to engage with and be present with, even if you're not able or, particularly enjoy the thing that they enjoy. I think that's
Yeah.
really.
And you can also give them the gift of like more of their play style. So like, you could put her in a position where it's like, I'm going to sign you up for a theater camp, or I'm going to put you in a position where like you can go and like explore this. And the cool thing about children that are obviously always getting older is that they are always needing an opportunity to do it by themselves, where like they're starting to learn how to have this resiliency and this agency. I believe the whole reason why we have play as an instinct is because complex mammals need play in order to sort of like learn the ropes of life so that they can leave, mama bear and go into the woods and like figure out how to be a bear, right? That play, rough and tumble play with like their brothers and sisters when they're little baby cubs is to figure out the limitations of their own body and to learn how to move their body and to learn how to hunt and to do all of these things, so that they can kind of leave the nest and go and become a big bear. And the same applies for adults and, kids, where it's like they're learning all of these social rules that are just so unspoken you can't read in a book. You have to like live them. And without play, you lose all of that knowledge and all of that agency and capability. So the more they're doing stuff kind of on their own, it's like that magic of the teen, like the preteen and the teenager, where you have those coming of age stories. A lot of those have like big moments of play or some type of self-discovery. And so putting them in a position where they're kind of on their own and they're doing this stuff that's really exciting to them can be so good for their development. And then as long as they can come back and be like, look at what I did, and then have everyone applaud, like that's the goal. But even if, you don't want to do a theater camp because maybe she's too young to do directing stuff, you get a group of friends together and say, okay, I think today is going to be theater camp day at our house, and you're going to be the director. You guys are going to be the actors, or, whatever. And let's like get this group together and like see what you can come up with in 3 or 4 hours. And then all the
That's
parents will come together as the audience at the end of the day and will like give you a stage and like a red
yeah.
carpet, or, like you can set scene stuff and
Uh-huh.
really make it feel special. And then they'll remember it for the rest of their lives.
That's so funny because she naturally has done that before.
Hell yeah. I love that. Go with initiative.
Wants to do it. So, they put on a show and they had so, one thing that I'm hearing is like play is how we develop life skills. So what happens in a society when like all these preteens and teens are like glued to their screens?
Ugh. Yeah, it's the extreme cases are the reason why Dr. Stuart Brown started his research, and it's really scary and really sad. He started his research in the early 90s, because he was studying the psychology of mass shooters. And he was essentially trying to figure out, like, is there something common among all of these, sort of like the development of these human beings that get them to a place where they feel like they have to have this massive explosion of emotional agency, including the desire and the agency to take one's own life, usually at the end, was a lot of the cases he was looking at. He was mainly studying the Texas shooter. It was at a particular campus. I'm never going to be able to remember it, but there was like a tower, and it's a famous story. Of course, I'm not going to remember it in the moment I need to. And so one thing that he
Columbine,
noticed,
right? I don't even know.
right, one thing that he noticed was the lack of play was so obvious that there was this loss of complete and total psychological agency from a very early age, right? Yeah, I mean, obviously abuse and trauma, but like the thing that was really sort of standing out to Dr. Stuart Brown when he was studying this before he started doing play research was, oh my God, like these people didn't have play in childhood. And then as a result, they've got this massive lack of agency that they feel in their being, to the point where it builds up to this explosive monumental moment where all of that need for agency sort of comes out because they've been brooding for so long about not feeling like they've ever had agency. It just really boils down to agency, agency, agency. And as someone who's, struggled my whole entire life with a panic disorder and a phobia that's really, really tough to deal with from a really early age, like age 5, the loss of agency in my life was really evident in terms of the way that I felt as a kid. And I got like a proper amount of play to, like it wasn't like I was play deprived or anything like this guy was. But the thing that I find really empowering is the fact that play at any point of your life can like literally breed the skills inside of you for feeling like you've got power over your situation because it's training you to be the one in control of that moment where you're the one making the decisions. It's in your hands. You're leading the play. You're engaging the way that you want to engage, right? There's feedback from the external world that's telling you, whether or not you want to keep pushing that direction or you want to change directions or try something different. It also breeds this feeling of possibilities where like you feel like, oh wow, things can go my way if I just learn how to navigate properly. And play is giving you that constant feedback to the point where you can go, yeah, I think I've got this. I can handle this. I've played so many times on this tree, like I think I can jump from that branch to this branch. And then when you do that a few times and then you can do it pretty easily, you got to take the next challenge. I think I can actually jump 2 branches, right? And now you've got these cool people like Rafe Kelly. If you know who Rafe Kelly is, he's this guy who does all of this really incredible kinesthetic play where he gets a group of adults out into the literal woods in the jungle and like gets them to do all this tree play and all of this parkour stuff. And it's amazing. And they have an amazing spiritual experience almost because of the fact that they're sort of building as an adult this sense of deep self-trust and agency over their environment. So without play as a kid, we've got all these teenagers that are, really just passively consuming. They're not engaging in active play. I mean, Dr. Stuart Brown has said very plainly, this is causing a massive mental health epidemic. It is like our number one prerogative is to get play back into the hands of teenagers and kids, and especially, back into the hands of adults, because they're the ones that are training the kids that they don't need it because socially it's, not something that we're super, fond of.
Yeah, and like as I'm hearing you talk about like the avenue for play, like I keep hearing it's really about the intention because you can put your kid in gymnastics and theater and all the activities like we try to do so that the kids aren't, on their screens, but then it ends up being about achievement again, rather than this like very explorative, just self-led, like, let me see what's possible kind of an experience. And it's like you're doing sports and you're doing this, but all of a sudden, when the pressure is introduced, that if you're not achieving while doing it, then now it's not play anymore. It's this obligation. It's this like stress inducing, like, it becomes work again.
Yeah.
That,
Boredom breeds opportunities for play. If you
yeah,
don't have the space to be bored, you will not be able to know what that little whisper inside of you wants to say because the whisper gets drowned out by all of the anxiety for what it has to do. So if you're, and again, like filling your schedule with a bunch of crap is not play.
right,
Like I
right,
cannot stress it enough. It just, if you're signing your kid up for theater because that's their play style and they're showing a massive deep interest and they're becoming alive whenever they're engaged, that's different. But if you're just arbitrarily signing them up for piano and violin lessons and sports
right.
and like the parents justifying it in terms of, well, they seem to really like it. It's usually going to be a situation of they don't have enough unstructured playtime. Number one rule, it has to be unstructured. And the
Right.
reason why it has to be unstructured is because that's the space required in order for the self to emerge and slowly start to figure out how it wants to engage with the external world. If it's being told what to do, the play instinct is immediately suppressed.
That's fascinating because I've had, my mom say you have to put her in this kind of, you know, music class, whatever instrument. I think the latest she's been pushing was the violin. And it's just like, yes, there's something to be said about how different instruments can, help access new neural connections and things like that. I get it. And maybe like, Dr. Amon's work talks about how sports that include, rackets and paddles and things that also engage the brain in different ways and how that's so healthy. But it's like many times music class is very structured. And so in practice is very structured. And it sounds like unless she's willing to engage with the instrument in a playful, self-led kind of way, then really this activity that she's engaging in, it just becomes like another stressor as opposed to an opportunity to be creative. And it could be just because she doesn't have that play style. And I think for adults, it's the same kind of thing where we hear like all these things that should be good for us. And so we try to do the things, but they're not really the things that put us in a play state. And then it just becomes like another like thing on our checklist to do because it's good for us,
So true. I know.
right?
And to think about like we have to plan for unstructured playtime is also sort of in that mindset where it's like I
Yeah.
have to plan for 4 hours of doing nothing because play is good for me and I have to set this aside.
Right.
So it this is why I'm saying like I can give a certain amount of advice and it can be taken in a way that still is just keeping someone stagnant, where it's like, oh, now this is one more thing I should do. And then
Right.
it ends up becoming something that's still not quite liberating them. So it has to be this individual journey of like,
Mhm.
listen to your body. Your body knows what a play state feels like. The odds are you weren't so play deprived as a kid that you don't remember in your body what it feels like to engage in play. Your body knows. And so taking time in a way that feels good and that isn't stressful to explore what that feels like in the body is going to take, for some people, a lot of repetition, like it did me. I needed a lot of introspection and a lot of time and a lot of being angry and a lot of having an inner critic that was a total asshole and taking that time and just sort of like letting it slowly make baby steps towards progress. That's what I needed. Some people might have a one and done experience where they have this euphoric experience, they see the light, and then they're forever changed. Who knows? But I think the most important thing is to listen to yourself and to not feel like you have to check off some kind of protocol or anything. I think the best thing to do is to just start with your play history and to go, what did I love to do as a kid? Am I
Yeah.
doing anything like that now? Are there ways for me to kind of like explore in that arena if I haven't touched it in a while? So right for me, it's
Yeah.
performance. Like I just as a kid didn't really like performing. It was something that was very suppressed. Slowly started to come out when I was a teenager, and then eventually became something I really loved. And then I became an adult, and I was like, don't have time for that. Don't have
Hmm.
time for that, right? And so then, for me, it's like I can totally like carve out some time and go to an open mic, you know? You can make stuff happen that are in that category that it's an adult appropriate way for you. So you don't feel like you don't have to pretend to be a kid. A lot of people today I'm noticing are like into this like inner child work, right? And it's like spreading a little bit of a strange message to me where it's like you have to like go in and become your inner child and let them sort of take the driver's seat and then you can like just be goofy, and it's like this weird cringy thing for a lot of people because they're
Uh,
sensing something is off, and I think that's apt. Like you don't have to become your child version of you in order to engage in play. You can be fully an adult and just become more whole in a state of play. But you're not like becoming a child and like, running around flapping your arms and, doing child stuff. Like you don't have to. Like I don't
yeah.
that's
Yeah. Don't feel like
everything.
yeah. Don't feel like that's what it means to connect with your inner child. Like
Yeah.
you could really be connected to that part of you while being a full adult.
Yeah.
And I also love what you said about boredom because you know how many times my daughter has said, but I'm so bored, like if her screen time will run out. And I'm like, that's good. And if you give it long enough, the problem is I think there's so many dysregulated adults too that when the child starts to experience like anxiousness or just angry or whatever the feeling is around boredom, and then we're dysregulated that we don't want to like sit with their uncomfortable emotions, like we want it to kind of go away. It's like sometimes that gets in the way of then letting them kind of work through that boredom. Because if when we can kind of sit through that with them, like, 10, 20 minutes later, she's like creating stuff. You know what I mean? She's like, she found something to do that wasn't on a screen. And usually, so her other thing is she's very crafty and she just likes to make things. And so, imagine if I took the boredom away right away, she would lose that because she wouldn't need to let her mind, wander or whatever. And I think sometimes as an adult, it's just too easy. Like nobody's taking away our phones. Nobody is shutting
Oh,
off our
no.
TV.
Yes. No, and it's so hard to have that self-control because of that doom cycle we were talking about earlier. We're so burnt out. We're so tired. It's the only thing that feels like is the option because we can't imagine lifting our feet and going and doing something that's high energy, active, and playful when all we can think about is just the fact that we want to sleep, but we have to stay up so that we don't
Mhm.
ruin our sleep cycle. So might as well be entertained because that's what the rest of the world does, and it's so socially encouraged for
Right.
us to have that routine of like go to work, go home, turn on the TV. We've
Yeah.
been doing that for 70 years.
Oof.
Like it's hard to break to be able to say like no, I'm gonna purposely put these things away. I'm gonna be the best parent to myself. And I'm gonna say no to my screen time. I'm gonna say no to the TV. I'm gonna say no to this stuff. I'm gonna put myself in an environment where I'm bored. Because then when we're bored, we go, oh my God, I have all of these things I need to be doing.
Right, right. We think of all the things that we've been, that we have to do, that we've been putting off, and now I should do them, should.
Yep.
And but also what I love about what you said is that play is about agency because with that agency comes what I heard as confidence. And so we have, all the things that lead us to want to achieve, and that's like trying to prove our self-worth, trying to like say that we're worthy of recognition, of, even like feeling loved, where if you have agency and you're gaining the confidence by saying, oh, look, I had the idea to do this and I did it, and now I'm going to do something even harder. It's like when we don't build that up as kids, what ends up happening is like we look for confidence kind of in our ability to achieve as opposed to it in ourselves, like having that core belief. Um, and I think that's also probably a lot. It has to do a lot as I'm listening to you with all the prominence of oh my God, what's the word I'm looking for here? I want to say impersonation. That's not the word. Imposter syndrome,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
right? Like I feel like that is so prominent too because we haven't had the chance to develop that necessarily. And it's like, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk too about how your experience and how it led you to be doing this in a big way. And you've mentioned already, in a past life you were a teacher. So tell us what that experience was like as a teacher and how it shaped or informed like the work you do now. And because it is so fascinating to just be talking about this given the way that kids are being brought up in very differently than other um, generations.
Yeah. We have been in, I grew up this way. So millennials are included in this. But we are in a state of just complete and total over control and over parenting our kids to death. We are putting them in classrooms facing forward desks and getting them to ingest information like good little boys and girls from age, 5, 4. Some of these kids are entering into kindergarten at 4 years old. And they are just so stressed out. You put all of this pressure on them to like behave well, do well, perform well, do what the teacher says, do what mommy and daddy say, do what society says. Like there's just so much pressure on being something, and if you're not that, you're bad. And if you are that, you're good. And it's so outdated. It's just so outdated. I can't even begin to express how much frustration I felt as a teacher watching these kids' play instincts just get super, super suppressed. And then being told, and they had to go home and they had to do 4 hours of homework.
Mhm.
It's truly absurd. It gets me very angry. And it was tough because I got the really lucky job, right? I spent 12 years teaching visual art, poetry, and theater and improv. I was doing the fun stuff where it was like kids would come to me and be like, "Yay, we finally free for a moment. We get to do fun stuff." And then I would have to be like, "Do what you're told. Do this the correct way. There's a right way, there's a wrong way, and you have art homework." And they'd be like, "What?" And I was just like, "I'm so sorry."
Oh.
So there was this sense of, I worked at a school that was pretty strict and had a really, really, really high expectations for the students. It was a classical liberal arts school. There are a lot of wonderful things about it, but there were a lot of awful things about it. And one of the things that I just didn't agree with was how much pressure we put on the kids from such an early age. And then they don't have time to play, they don't have time to socialize. And when they do socialize, like you have 10 minutes here, and now you have 10 minutes here, and you have 30 minutes here, and then at the end of the day, like you can kind of whisper to each other, but if you get louder than that, like we have to punish you. And it was just, it's too much. Like it's just creating all of these like little mini breakdowns in the classroom. And I remember like, 12 years ago when I started teaching K-5, I was in the kindergarten classrooms, and God, I loved kindergarten because they're just so cool. They're so expressive and authentic and interesting and curious about the world. And I had a room full of, 30 of them. And I would give them something, art related to do, and they would just go wild with it and they would have so much fun. And maybe I'd have a couple of breakdowns in the classroom, but overall, like there was just so much spiritedness to the 5-year-olds. And then like as I kept teaching every year, I started noticing like, okay, the kids are sort of developing more and more like mental health problems from an earlier and earlier age. I went from having maybe one breakdown in one classroom to like three or four to like about half of the room started to have issues with fear of taking risk, super afraid of whether or not they were going to do something right or wrong, really nervous about my judgment and my expectation on them, worried about mommy and daddy getting mad at them, crumpling up their paper, ripping it up, throwing it on the floor, stomping on it, running away. All of this kind of behavior that was just sort of like red flags in terms of like, why are these kids not able to just sort of like take some color and start playing and see what happens if you mix these colors together, just free play with color, which is one of the activities I had them do. And they would just sort of be like, I'm not sure what to touch or what to do because I'm so afraid of getting in trouble.
Mm.
And that's not okay. That's heartbreaking. Their play instinct is completely suppressed at that point. It should not be suppressed at age 5. We're not giving them enough free time. We're not giving them enough unstructured playtime. And then you're gonna, do that to them until they're in 12th grade, and then they're supposed to figure out what they're supposed to do with their life. And it's just so much fucking pressure. And I couldn't stand it. To the point where, parents would come in on curriculum night and they would be like, "What's my son doing in your drama class? I want to know." And I'd be like, "Yeah, come on in. We're going to play some games. We're going to have a lot of fun." And of course, I'm like very aware that adults are much harder to get to play than children are. And, some parents would just be really resistant. "Oh, I can't do that. I can't draw. I can't. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of lady," and they would literally just say, "I'm not doing that." And they would refuse and have like a little emotional shutdown as like a 45-year-old man.
Mm.
And I would be like, "Oh man, I got my work cut out for me." But sometimes by the end, the thing that was really exciting for me was that by the end of curriculum night, which was one of my favorite nights, I would have these like grown men go, "I haven't had that much fun in I don't know how many years." And then my heart would break. And I would be like, "God, I don't want those words to be true for you." Because this was
Mhm.
10 minutes of your life playing Zip Zap Zop in a drama classroom in your eighth grade kids, teacher's room. Like, this is so sad. So, this excitement for my business sort of came from watching slowly children's mental health sort of decline over the last, decade, watching parents really struggle with having accessibility to play, opportunities for play in such a strict and sort of serious world for adults where therapy is serious, work is serious, everything has to be serious. And so it inspired me about 8 years ago. I really started thinking like, what are all of my skills? How do I combine them? What can I do to serve the world? And the thing I came up with 8 years ago was I want to bring creativity and play to adults. And I was like, that's such a big dream. Like I'd never be able to do that. And I sort of put it in the back pocket. But every year I'd kind of be like, "Oh, I think I'd really like to do that. I think I'd really like to do that." Then I had a series of events that sort of put me in a position where I was like, "Well, only got one life to live. Like, let's do it." And I took the risk about a year and a half ago and started the company.
What an awesome story of that. And it was like you were in the exact right place to like learn that about yourself, right? That's what moved you and inspired you and how you're changing lives. I mean, for someone to say that, like you said, those 10 minutes at 45 years old was the most fun that you've had, like, and the fact that you had that like crushing moment that moved you into wanting to fix that in the world, right? Like fix is probably not the right word. It's like to heal that, right?
Yeah.
To heal that pain for someone that moved you to do it. It's so like purpose centered, so purpose driven, and that's what
Yeah.
I love about your story the most, right?
Yeah, and I also love the part of my story too that I didn't share, which was my dad was so playful. He was
Oh,
one of the most playful human beings I've ever met in my life. And if you could combine like Tim the Toolman Taylor and like Jim Carrey, like, and Jim Varney, if you guys know who that is from the 1980s, like Ernest Goes to Jail. If you combined all three of those characters together, that would be my dad. And he was so playful and he taught me how to play. He was the main sort of agent in my life that modeled what playfulness looked like in a personality. And to be able to have that be a part of my story too, where, my dad passed away of COVID in 21, and to have that kind of be like obviously huge moment in your life when you lose a parent. And to be
yeah.
able to say, like, God, one of the reasons why I'm doing this is to honor my dad and to take like that legacy that he gave me and to like bring it into the world. Like, I couldn't feel like more motivated and honored because it's personal in a way that's not just my education, not just my unique personality. Because I feel like I'm a bard, right? Like, that's my archetype is like, I am a bard. I'm meant to do this. Like, that's who I am. But also, in addition, to be able to have it be a family legacy that I get to bring is just extra special to me.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That was definitely a part of the story that I didn't know. And it is so powerful that you're able to like have people feel his essence through you. It's like he continues to live within you, and that's beautiful. Thank
Yeah,
you
it
for that.
feels extra cool to
Hmm.
do that.
Yeah.
Because the thing that I love about my play style and my dad's play style is that there's this persona to it, where you're
Hmm.
sort of like building anticipation and surprise and sort of comedy, or this feeling of like what's going to happen. What is she going to do? What is he going to do? That's the element that I love to bring to the classroom and the element that I love to bring to facilitating that I think is just very unique to me that I get to go, oh, I get to use this. I get to be like this strange Willy Wonka that comes into a space and, lays out all of this strange stuff on a table and asks you to do things that you like, you just have no idea what's going to come in these workshops. You have no idea what I'm going to make you do. And then for me to just have this devilish, like silent grin on my face, of like, I'm going to put you to the challenge and I'm going to see, what you can do, and then have people, really engage.
Yeah.
There's a psychological element to it where you really have to provide an environment that makes people feel safe, but
Hmm.
as adults doesn't patronize them. This is
Mm.
huge in the play world that I'm not seeing a lot of. I'm seeing a lot of like we're talking to adults like they're children and we're like dumbing them down and whatever. It's like adults oftentimes they feel nervous and they want to be told they suck at stuff. They want to be put in a position where like they're not being patronized and be like, "Oh, you did such a nice job on your
Oh.
pretty flower drawing." Like no adult wants to be talked to like that. I like giving really difficult challenges that no one's going to be able to succeed in so that everyone's failing. And then there's this freedom of like, this isn't about productivity. This isn't about process, or this isn't about progress. This isn't about like showing off being A plus. This is about the
Mm.
process of just doing something chaotic, having it go poorly on purpose, and going, yeah, I don't care because I'm just having fun, which is a hard thing to do with adults. So you have to kind of like very fine tune the activities so that it creates kind of this environment where they don't feel pressure.
Yeah, like I can imagine how like your unique personality too allow like I when you describe this persona and like being able to be silly, like your ability to be so authentically you and be free to do whatever kind of also opens up the doors for others to be like, you know, she can be all the ways that she's uniquely her. Maybe that gives me a little bit more permission to be all of me in whatever messy way that means, right? Like,
I love getting ugly. My favorite emoji that I use on my Instagram is like this little like demon mask that I love that's got this like demon mask face on it.
you know what you're
And
talking
it's
about?
because I'm like trying to show like you can get nasty, you can get ugly, you can get gnarly, you can get freaking weird. Like I want the nasty, juicy stuff because that's where creativity lies, especially when people are suppressed or dealing with pain. Like, why are we so afraid of pain? We are so afraid of death in this
Mm.
culture, and we are so afraid of pain in this culture. And those are the things that oftentimes are hiding our creative spirit. And that creative spirit won't come out if we're trying to make something that's like pretty and perfect and like consumable and like this cute little thing that everyone can take home and like show. It's like I'm noticing like in my area, there's all these cool like craft nights that you can go to. But then you're making like trendy, cute little things. And then there's this pressure of if mine's not cute and consumable, if no one would
Mm.
buy this, then I'm garbage. I suck. I'm not good at this. And now we've got sort of the and I literally went to some of them and girls were whispering like, "Oh, this is why I don't do these things is because I just come to them and I get really overwhelmed and I shut down and I don't want to finish. But I'll take it home. And you guys are doing great. Yours is so good. Yours is so nice. Yours is so cute. No, yours is good too. Oh, yours is great." And I'm just like, God, I'm like back to the art room where like I'm hearing the insecurities of eighth graders, talking about like these social rules where you can't break them. Everybody else is good at something, but you have to be terrible at it. It's so ingrained in our being that it never leaves until we're adults. And it's like still, I'm trying to get them to see like, yeah, yours suck. You guys suck at this. All of you suck at it. None of you made anything good. Isn't that liberating? Like, you don't have to be good at a skill to be valuable. You can just fart around on paper and like have a good time and feel what it feels like to have that texture of that thick paint on your fingers and what it feels like to smoothly like make it on the paper and like that enjoyable sensory experience is so wonderful, isn't it? And then to have this disgusting series of colors all over your paper that, looks like poop and vomit. Like, it's so gross, isn't it? You made this ugly thing that no one's going to want to keep and you're going to throw it away later. Didn't you have fun? Wasn't that so fun to not have to think about what you were making anymore and to not have to have all of that pressure on you? Because I think that's what we need, is to be okay with not being good at something and having that not affect our value as a person, and then to just enjoy what it feels like to make stuff.
Well, what I heard too was like getting really in your body and present because you talked about all the senses and like, oh my God, how many times do we not pay attention to what things feel like or to, really be present with an experience and you're kind of leading them through how to do that. But that's so valuable then when we're not there because we tune in a way that right now I feel like most of us are pretty disconnected from our bodies because we're just kind of like in our heads trying to do the right next thing. And honestly, like I volunteer at the school often and I've met, a lot of other children's parents and I think there's not only a lot of pressure to get things right, but unfortunately it's also like what is acceptable or not acceptable emotions.
Yeah.
It's like it's really sad, honestly, because it's like the emotions all of a sudden are being turned into behavior
Yeah. Yeah.
as opposed to like like they're expressing something that is happening in their bodies and they're being told like stop crying, stop screaming, stop, without addressing that there is literally like something happening in their bodies and they're trying to release it and they're being told not to. And then to top it off, it's like an unacceptable emotion. And so when you talk about like, what is seen as good is like all that's cute and pretty and fun and whatever. But also on the other side of that is like emotions, like what is sad and deep and angry and that is expressed in art, but also in the way that we feel it in our bodies as children. Like so what I always say, and I think it was my therapist that said it first, is like you're only going to express the amount of positive emotions to the height that you're able to express the negative. And it's like this pendulum.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're unwilling to go into the depths of sorrow and despair and anger and sadness, you start muting your ability to experience the other end of that spectrum too. And so by like putting these kids in these boxes of like, this is right, and this is the emotion you're supposed to feel, and this is how you're supposed to express yourself all the time. Like, don't, whisper, don't don't cry, don't yell,
Don't be
don't
angry.
don't be angry. you know don't express what you said because that hurt that other kid. And it's not to say that there are things that kids do that are hurtful, right? And we should teach them how to express themselves in a more helpful way. But these kids are being told, like, don't say what you feel. Don't say what you thought about this situation, because it's like making them responsible for other kids' emotions, and those emotions are not good. Like, don't
Right.
have them. And
Yeah.
so it's like when you talk about play, I also think about how play therapy works, right? And how they're able to then like kind of work through some of those emotions that are like not acceptable, right? And so I think some of it is also like when I hear you talking about what's right and what's wrong, and looking good and not wanting to embarrass yourself. And I think about, even dance is one of the most joyful things I do, and yet I still hear that little inner critic every now and then, like, don't try to do that move, you can't do it, you're not good at this dancing thing in that way, like, stick to what you know.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so true. And I think play is such a fabulous container for appropriate expression of emotions. Like, as a teacher who was very, very like strict in a way, like you'd be surprised, but like I had a very, very tightly run classroom with like really tight procedures, really high expectations for the kids' behavior. It's a very important distinction in terms of like what the behavior does and what the emotion is. And to have the space of art, the arts, to be able to put a kid who's got a lot of, difficult trauma in their past or whatever, and to put them in a role where they can express that in the dialogue that that they've got. And they might not even necessarily be aware of it, but something clicks for them and they're like, they feel so amazing on stage when they were like, this class is stupid and I don't want to be in it, to this was the most fun I've ever had in my life, right? I had got a lot of that feedback, especially from kids that were boys that were not looking forward to the drama class in eighth grade, right? And those kids, it was because I was very particular. I was like, I'm going to sort of listen to your story and put you in a role where you can express some of these emotions that you're not allowed to express anywhere else except on stage. Julia Cameron says this all the time: make art from a heated imagination rather than do actions from a heated imagination, right? Like, rather than tear somebody's head off while you're driving, or ruin your relationship with your friend or your partner because you got triggered, go into the safe container of play and creativity and make art from the heated imagination, and finally let these emotions get the validation that they deserve, the attention that they deserve, the presence that they deserve. Process them in a way that's so freeing and liberating that you're not hurting anybody or doing anything that's causing a problem, right? That's very
Hmm.
important to train into kids. But that you're not suppressing them to the depths of the ocean and locking them in a cage like a titan, and then having that be most of the mental health problems that are sort of popping up. Is just so much depression and anxiety is coming from suppressed emotions. So if we can create a safe container in play to get out all of these like gnarly little emotions, where it's like, you might watch a kid play, especially like young kids, and you'll watch them with their dolls or whatever, or with their like imagination storytelling, and it'll be really violent. They'll be like, and this guy killed this guy, stab, 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 and they just like really go off on the stabbing, and the parents are
Right.
like, that's not appropriate, stop that right
Right.
now. It's like, they've got anger, let them work through it. This is a safe container, it's okay. And that's what I think is so powerful about creativity and play combined together. You can pull up all of this unconscious stuff in a safe place. And then, not necessarily with me, right? Because I'm not a licensed therapist in any way. But if you've got the tools and you've been doing a lot of self-work on your own, you can use that as information for like what's going on inside of you. This happens all the time in my online facilitations. I guess it's because maybe it's more intimate. We're in our houses. The structure of it
Mm.
is a little bit more introspective. But I'm telling you that the stuff that's been pulled out of some of these like workshops is insane. Like people will create this and they'll be like, we were just doing this silly prompt. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at the way that I feel about the decision I just made to move across the country. And I'm dealing with an intense amount of grief or an intense amount of anger or an intense amount of fear. And all of a sudden, it's right on this paper in symbol form in front of me. And I'm overwhelmed because I didn't even know while I was creating that that's what I was doing. And that's the magic that I want to tap into as someone who's doing creative and creativity and play and authenticity together in one workshop is I want to pull out that part of you and give it to you as an offer. You don't have to take it. A lot of people don't know that that's what they're doing and they'll never know, you know. Maybe years later
Mm.
they do, maybe they never do and it doesn't matter. That's okay. But for those people that are ready for it and are hungry to find more about themselves in an authentic way where they're just surprised at what they're doing, they're going to be able to reflect on what they're doing and go, holy shit, I'm finally getting in contact with these emotions that have been locked underground this whole time. This is my avenue to find this. And then it becomes like this addiction where you're like, I got to do this again. Give me more prompts so I can find more about myself. And
Yeah.
that's where the real work comes in for a lot of people.
Well, it's going back to what you said about like being in that flow state because that allows like your thinking brain to finally like slow down and calm down, and then all the subconscious stuff is going to come out without you necessarily like really trying to think about it. It's just like naturally going to come out because you've finally relaxed long enough to like shut off your nonstop thinking mind.
Right. And again, that's why it's so important for it to be embodied because that's when truth starts to emerge.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so tell us about like how are the different ways you work with people? You mentioned that you do some online workshops. What are some other ways that people can start to do some of these events with you or like learn more about you, get to do more of adult play in their lives with you?
Great question. So right now I host four different kinds of workshops. One of them is online and I do with anyone who wants to join me from anywhere in the world. I'm currently doing them on Sunday, P Pacific time morning, so like 11 a.m. Pacific time, so that a lot of people from all over the world can join in. And it's amazing how many different types of people we have come in. I'm always so surprised. Like sometimes there's only like a couple Americans and then everyone else is from somewhere
Wow.
else in the world. And it's so rewarding. Like I love that. That makes me feel so good. I'm just like, wow, like all these people from all over the world. I'm a collector. So I'm just like, oh, a person from France, a person from Australia, you know. And so those are really introspective. We have our cameras on the whole time and we literally play with one another and we do a lot of like inner creative work where I'm giving you a prompt and then you're drawing on your own or you might turn your camera off and you might do like wild ecstatic dancing type stuff or things like that. It's usually always expressive arts. There's a combination of visual art, music, storytelling, body movement. Like I combine a lot of different modalities together to kind of make one workshop and they're 2 hours long too, which is just like so you can't do it in any less than 2 hours. It takes that long for the body to like open up and be vulnerable. And then
Yeah.
I host three different types of workshops in person in Phoenix, Arizona, and they're all downtown at the Arizona Center. And those are three different, I almost want to call them like three different like flavors of medicine, right? If we want to use my analogy of PlayRx, right?
All right.
So one of them is called Mindful RX. And it's very slow, introverted, chill, introspective. We usually do one craft play type activity for about an hour, and then a lot of like introspective stuff to kind of get you warmed up in the beginning. And that's a really good starting place for most people. And it's ended up becoming one of my favorites just because there's so much juicy stuff that can come out of those that I think is really cool. I had my last one, I had a generation of three women, a daughter, her mother, and her mother come in together and there was some like generational healing that was happening and it
Wow.
was like I was like I didn't like do that on purpose, it just happened and it was so cool.
Wow.
So that one's really really cool and then there's another one called Connect RX which is basically a way for people, mostly like single people that are looking for friends, to kind of come and like bond with new people and make friends with strangers and kind of learn how to connect
Mhm.
authentically with other people through play, how to make eye contact, how to sort of like enjoy a moment of laughter and then have that oxytocin and that bond with another stranger, how to collaborate in play with other people, how to give up your creative idea and sort of like just go with the flow and not be so controlling over something and really learn how to collaborate with other people. So that one's really challenging, but really rewarding. And then the third one is a personal favorite of mine because I'm ADHD and it's meant for me and people like me. It's called Adrenaline RX and it's highly
Okay.
competitive and it's highly fast paced and it's always timed. So you get a series of prescriptions that I literally like put on a like fake prescription pad, and I write them out like a literal prescription. And then I'll give them, 2 minutes at a time. You'll like tear them off and somebody will read them out loud. And it's like, okay, you get this prompt. You have to melt the ice cube the fastest. The fastest person to melt the ice cube without using fire wins. Your time starts now. And then, somebody's putting it in their armpit, somebody's putting it in their mouth, somebody's going to the sink and like trying to like use the water to get it to heat up. Somebody's turned the tea kettle on, somebody's smashed it on the floor and like, like stepping on it a million times to try and get rid of the ice cube. And it's so cool to see like how many ways people will solve a problem. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like it's got a flavor of like Game Changer or Taskmaster in a way where there's just a lot of creative problem solving under a time constraint, so that you don't have time for your inner critic to get in the way. Like it's now or never and you got to go, baby. So if you're not the competitive type, you can get really overwhelmed easily. Probably not the one for you. But I've found that a lot of neurodivergent people love adrenaline because I've heard this over and over and over again. It's the first time I was finally not bored, right? Where normally ADHD people are so ahead of the teacher, they're just already like waiting to do the thing and they want to just get going. And with adrenaline, they can finally let themselves like creatively express at the pace that they've always wanted to with no restrictions. And I think for them, that is just an absolute treat to be able to go into that flow state with themselves. Um, so that's a really fun one. Um, and then I also have like sort of resources that you can use at home by yourself. So I've got this free resource that's called the Play Jar, which is basically a little series of these little prompts, like 150 of these prompts that you can just put in a jar and put on your desk. And when you're feeling like, I want unstructured playtime, but I'm overwhelmed and I don't really know what to do, and I'm sort of scared, and it's just overwhelming to have to plan that, and I don't want to, I just scroll, like it's so much easier to scroll. You go to the Play Jar and you pull out a prompt and then you open it and it might say, go try something new in your area in this category, like go get a boba tea or go try some Korean food, or, it might get you to go collect something. It might get you to go and do something with your body. It might get you to go create something in your house. It might get you to go try, a different kind of sensory experience where like like it literally might say like go find an area in your city you've never been to before and spend 10 minutes in it. And for a lot of people, they're going to go, oh, that just doesn't sound like it's going to be very fun. And then they do it. And then that new sort of what happens is your brain neurons just start doing different things because this novelty, right? You have to have novelty in your life in order for your brain to stay healthy. And so oftentimes, even though it doesn't sound like it's going to be very good, again, it becomes really rewarding. So I have that's available for free, on my Instagram through a little link through signing up for my newsletter. And I'm very excited about this. I'm developing a series of playscription cards, where eventually I'm going to have a card deck that you're going to be able to use at home with your family, your friends. I'll have one for a corporate environment as well, so that you can have basically my play prompts with you at home and you can facilitate your own sort of play party if you want.
I love that. I love especially how like the theme kind of runs through it. And I want you to say a little bit more about it, but I'm just like so intrigued. Like you have such a creative mind and you've obviously put so much thought into all these events and meeting different needs of different types of people. And they just you could like hear the passion in your voice and in your heart. And it's just like I just wanted to share how like impressed I am with everything that you have to offer and how much I can like really feel your heart in it. And I wanted to hear more about, that theme of the PlayRx. How did it get its name and like what does it mean?
Oh, I love that question. Not very many people ask that question. So I started my company actually as Met Art Morphosis because I was really interested in the sort of the unconscious, like deep dive into the soul and pulling out all of this authenticity. But it just was missing the play component. And I really love this idea of what it means to play as an adult. So I just honestly, I spent like months rebranding and overthinking in my head and like trying to figure out, like, I know I'm a collector. If I gather enough ideas, I know the one that will hit will feel right in my body. And so I was just waiting for that moment. And at one point, I came up with PlayRx and I was like, oh, this is it. Like, I just knew immediately. I was like, this is it. It like feels like, and the reason why was because my therapist a long time ago had said, wouldn't it be great if I could prescribe you to people to get them to play?
Oh,
And that's where I got the idea. It was sort of like, oh, what a great idea of like, I'm the prescription. Like, you're struggling with stagnancy in your life. You're dealing with feelings of not feeling very alive and you're feeling unmotivated. You've got all of this feeling of burnout. Like the thing that you need is an arena to practice all of the things you've learned in therapy, to get that agency back. And so that's where I got really excited. And I'm a big fan of like old cartoons from like the 1930s because they've got this like creepy, interesting, mysterious quality to them. So I made my little pill bottle guy sort of like based off of that, which is so convenient that I went to art school and I know how to draw because I didn't have to
that's
pay
awesome.
anybody.
That's
So
awesome.
it came from this idea, like I was just sort of pulling everything together, and that bright red orange just feels like me and my fire and like the feeling that you get when you're in a state of play. For me anyway. A lot of people, again, like it's not for everybody, but that's how I feel. So I was like, oh, that's gonna be my branding. So I got really excited about it. And then all of the ideas started coming. I was like, oh my God, a play prescription. Like I'm gonna literally write the prompts on a play prescription. I bought a lab coat that's like literally from a doctor's office
Love
that I
that.
put my logo on and it's bright orange. And so yeah, all of that stuff started coming together after I got the name, and it felt really, really solid to the point where I was like, oh yeah, this is it.
I love that. And in a society where like people just write a prescription for every symptom, it's like so refreshing that it's like what you really need is play. And let me prescribe you the type of play for your unique
Yeah,
situation. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing too. I would love to eventually develop different styles of play personality workshops. It's like this is the workshop for kinesthetics. This is the workshop for storytellers. This is the workshop for, and I'm very excited to eventually develop that because I feel like once I can get people's play personality and they know what it is, they can really start to curate their own little potion mix of what they need for themselves so that they are entering into a space where they feel confident. But also, I think it's important for people to be challenged. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I kind of do a little bit of everything. So at one point, you might be like, oh, this is where I come alive and I'm like at the top of my game. And then with other prompts, you might be like, yikes, I'm retreating and I'm meeting the inner edge of my own comfort level. This is high risk for me. And so they're meeting sort of this inner part of themselves that's really scared. And that's also the work. And it's
Mhm.
really important for them to know it doesn't mean it's not working. This is all about learning about who you are authentically. And sometimes you need a little bit of that pushback for you to know the edges of your own skin.
Yeah. That word really does keep coming up is authenticity. And obviously, like through everything you've kind of drawn out about your branding, it's all very authentic to you. It's very unique. And, you know, the way you've touched it in unique ways would be like you couldn't replicate it as somebody else, right? And so
Yeah.
you really live and breathe what you're teaching. And it is, especially in a world where now everything is AI, you're really losing, right? Authenticity. And so, and I even heard you talking about, maybe we turn off the camera and, you do some wild dancing. And so, is it that you feel that the more time that we spend in safe spaces, being that person that we're kind of afraid to show the world,
Yeah.
that eventually we will be able to do that outside of like our homes with the camera off in the world with other people? Like, will how are we connecting with our authenticity and losing the fear? Because it's in at its core, it's the fear of rejection that keeps us from being our authentic self. And sometimes that comes from our own self-rejection because, the words of our teachers and our parents with all those strict rules about how to be became our own voice, internal voice. And so is that what you're seeing? Is that when you give yourself permission in these safe spaces, then you start to feel more comfortable to experiment outside of them.
Yes, I still am in shock about it. I mean, I've got a big ego, so I love compliments and I love hearing, how my work does wonderful things for people. But sometimes the things that I hear in terms of like what it does for people is really genuinely like humbling and just I sometimes I'm just speechless. But I've had a couple of people sort of say something similar along the lines of like, my struggle comes from not knowing how to be authentic with people and not knowing how to put like what's inside on the outside. And a couple of people will be like, I was really struggling in the beginning with like your first thought, best thought prompt, where I say, like, first thought, best thought, when you hear this word, say the first word that comes to your head, blue. And they're like, asparagus. I'm like, great. You're doing it right. Like you're doing a great job. Or I'll say like blue and they'll be like, I don't know what to do. I have nothing. So what is blue? The ocean, right? And they're working really hard and it's like very difficult for them. And that's the process, right? No matter where you're starting from, the process is to get to a point where something deep inside of you is bubbling up without you having to do anything at all. That's when the well, is open. And to hear people go, I only went to your classes like 3 or 4 times and I'm getting so much better at listening to that voice and to having contact with that part of myself to the point where now I'm going out into the external world and it's so much. It's not necessarily like, again, these are baby steps that are being taken. The hope that's being given for the journey to actually be successful, I think is the part that's the most exciting and tells me that it's working, is the fact that people aren't like, oh, now I'm better. I wouldn't believe them. That's just not real work. Like, I don't know, like that feels like delusion somehow. But if people are like, I see the mountain past the fog cleared, and now I see my trail up the mountain. I know I'm going to be able to get better at this, and I'm confident because I've already made this much progress. That is the most rewarding thing to hear in the world because I'm a big fan of radical honesty. And I think a lot of people like to overperform and over compliment and oh my God, I love your dress. And if you're
Mm.
being honest, like you just want to connect. The dress isn't important, right? But we're like using this performative thing to get in the way because it's uncomfortable to say like I don't know anything about you, but there's something about you that I really like and I'd like to connect with you and become your friend. Not very many people are willing to say that, right? So instead we go, I
Mm.
love your glasses, right? Um, so for people to sort of say with themselves in all honesty, like I feel hope for change, um, that's the most rewarding thing I think I could hear.
That's powerful. That's so powerful. And I'll have you give us your Instagram handle in a bit because that resonated with me, that exercise first thought best thought, because I've done some of the activities right in your Instagram feed about like those quick play moments, right? And I have noticed that when you give those what's the first thing that comes to your mind, that there's so much of me that is like trying to figure out what the right thing is, and I struggle to like turn it off. And it's like there's always this internal struggle for me where it's like, okay, a big part of me is about integrity. And so authenticity comes with integrity in that, like, if I don't like the dress, I won't say I like the dress, right?
Yeah.
Like, I must tell the truth.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's this other part where it's like I must do the right thing that comes with integrity, right? That it's like, what's the right way? The not the wrong way. Like, what is the right thing to say in this moment, right? And so it does like there's this part of me that wants to be very like truthful and authentic, and this other part that's like it gets in the way, that's like, okay, but you can't say the wrong thing, so then you I lose kind of access to my intuition, I suppose, is what that is, and that child self. And so it's just interesting to like keep trying to re-engage, and it's like, okay, like, so what are some, when you say be quiet and be still so that you can kind of turn that off? What does that look like in play? Is it really just to before you start playing to kind of like be still, be quiet and then play? Like what is that? Or is it just to move through until it kind of subsides?
Such a
Like
good
what?
question. Again, it's going to look different for everybody, but I
Yeah.
think the thing that is so valuable that again can apply to everybody is to just be honest, radically honest, and accept whatever is honest. So, like for example, with meditation, a lot of people have the same struggle. So we're going to use that as the analogy, and then I'll
Right.
get home at the end. But like meditation, people are like, I have to turn off my thoughts. I can't get my thoughts to stop. I guess I'm supposed to watch them like a cloud, but that's really hard. And again, they're in having mode, right? Like Buddha talks about, where it's like you're trying to have the right thing, the right experience, the right state of being. And then there's being mode, which is just letting everything be exactly as it is with no qualms. So it's like with meditation, it's like, especially with people with ADHD, it's not about trying to get your mind to clear. It's just about like chilling with your mind, doing whatever it wants and accepting and just sort of watching whatever's going on and just being cool with it. Being like, I don't have to change. This is exactly
Yeah.
who I am in this moment. This is exactly what I am. And my brain is doing this. And I'm just watching it. And I'm not here to change it. I'm not here to do crap about it. I don't need to make, I don't need to be like, that's not who I am
Yeah.
right now, right? I'm being authentic. So, like, in the moment where you're like, first thought, best thought, and your brain is like, oh, I have to get it right, you're just going, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get it right. I'm just trying to get it right. And there's something that shifts, I think, for a lot of people in that moment of just accepting that it is radically, beautifully okay to be exactly who you are at all times. That all of a sudden, like, there's this spaciousness that opens up, and then some answers start coming. And then again, if you're trying to use that to like get it right, it might keep you stuck where you're like, well, if I did everything and I'm supposed to get the thing, it's like letting go of having any product, no final product. The product doesn't matter. The process is what matters. And just being like, oh, I got nothing. Yep, my answer's nothing. I got brain scrambled. Yep, my answer's brain scrambled. Like, as long as it's honest, you're doing it right, quote
Yeah.
unquote. Is because I think the obsession that we have with getting the product out or having the experience or the being, sort of feel like what it's supposed to feel like is the stress of I have to do this correctly because I'm being told what to do by the teacher. Screw the teacher. Punch her in the face. Tell her you don't want to do it that way and that you don't like it and that you want to think about 10 things at once. And that, in fact, you don't like this activity at all, and you would rather doodle on a piece of paper, right? Like whatever is true, like it has to be, I
Yeah.
think, the thing that we really are after. And that's what makes us feel so seen by our own selves. It's like, oh man, hey, you're going wacko for cuckoo puffs right now. Like you've got a million things that want to come out. And just being like, I'm embodying what it feels like to have this massive surge of, whatever energy this is. It might feel stressful. For me, it feels like a ton of worms that are just kind of like crawling all over each other. And I just sort of like zoom back and just let it do its thing. And sometimes I'll even ask it to do more. I'd be like, how big can you get? And like the worm thing will get like bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's really uncomfortable. And I'm like, cool. Like, do you have any desire to change or move? And it's like, no, I want to get even bigger. And you're like, okay, cool. And you just sort of sit with it. And that's just, you get to like explore what that thing is and not let it, you don't have to like push it into anything. You just get to
Yeah.
let it take up all the room.
Listen, this has been like so liberating because as I think back as to even how we got here, it's like I was literally going through a time when maybe some of it is still going on now where I'm like, I know I probably need to just connect with more joy. There's something, and I had this thought in my mind like that came to me immediately where I had seen one of your stories like shared on my feed about an event that actually I think it was my therapist went to your event, and I was like yeah, play, right? Like and I didn't even think of it. Like it was so immediate. Like I reached out and I have moments like that where I'm like, oh, I should reach out to this person. I just do it. And I don't really think about like what's the right thing to say or how to say it or, what's the right way to connect with them. And she reminded me of the account and I reached out and here we are. And I found to have so many like similarities, like so much of what you says resonates with me as someone that has ADHD, as someone that's lost someone really close to them during the pandemic with, to COVID, and so much of his story informs my story, right? And how it's connected to my purpose of helping people like really bring to life their dreams and their goals. And it's just like, wow, what if I had not listened? Right. And it's like, and there are so many moments where I do listen and hearing you say how that's what play is like. It's like, you know what? I'm not broken. Like, it's just like connecting more with those moments where you hear the voice and you listen to the voice. And sometimes that means I'm gonna feel one way, and other times I'm gonna feel the other way. And just because I like to play this way doesn't mean that, there's something broken about me because I don't like to play this other way. And it's like, it's just been really like, I don't know, it's been pretty liberating to hear you kind of describe what play is and how authenticity plays into it. And even as a mom, especially as a mom, I guess it's on my mind for my daughter, but also um, just to be very, um, I guess, give a lot of grace to myself, to her, and being mindful about how we always learn better when we're just experiencing joy, right? Like experiencing fun. And it doesn't always have to be so serious. And that thought that you have on, to do something, on the dance floor, or to reach out to somebody, or to like just what feels almost like an impulse is really just your authentic self kind of trying to express itself. And it's yeah, this conversation has been so life-giving and interesting and fascinating and engaging. And I wanted to just thank you for taking the time to do this with me and giving our audience like so much insight. And I'm sure people are learning so much about themselves as they're reflecting on the things that you're saying. And I love how you're changing the world, with and living out the legacy of your dad, by bringing more play to the world and joy and fun. And so, Renee does do a lot already on her Instagram page where she like you show off so much of your personality and give people brain breaks so that they can play just really quick. And so why don't you share how they can connect with you and get access to all those different resources, your workshops, your the prescription pads that are coming, and all the exciting ways that they can start to really kind of revitalize their lives with play.
Yeah, I am on Instagram as the PlayRx Cure, one word, the PlayRx Cure. And then my website is also just www.theplayrxcure.com. And yeah, I do play breaks every week. Hopefully, I'm gonna do them more than once a week, but right now they're still once a week. And then I'm also doing art breaks because of Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, where I'm also sort of getting people to slow down and engage in really great works of humanity, really see what it's like to engage with like excellent feats of creativity from other human beings so that you can get really inspired, especially in this time of AI where a lot of things are just kind of sort of overwhelming right now. Just really connecting to like authentic human like emotion, right? That sort of gritty, alive, connected, embodied creativity is, I think, something we should, if we're going to consume anything, let's be consuming that, right? Rather than the passive sort of junk food that we're often consuming on Instagram. And yeah, I am hosting my next online workshop for anyone in the world on April 20th at 11 a.m. or sorry, 10 a.m. Pacific time. And that can be found on my Instagram, my website. It's all there. So I'm very excited about that. That's going to be super fun. And then if the online workshops start to pop off, which I have a feeling they might, I would love to do those 2 to 3 times a month. and really get those becoming a part of your sort of weekly routine so that you can really be engaging it. Because the thing I really believe in is it's like a practice, like a dojo. You want to show up to the mat, you want to be consistent, you want to make small, natural baby steps of progress. This is not meant to change your life overnight. This is meant to be integrated into your health and wellness, just like exercise and nutrition would be.
Yes. It's so I love the way you like worded that. You should be feeding your body right. You should be engaging in wellness activities like yoga and exercise, but you also need play in your life to be a fully healthy, well-rounded like individual. Get just like getting sleep, exercise, nutrition. That's awesome. So, Renee, thank you so much again for taking the time to speak with us today. I loved everything about this, and I hope that we'll talk again, and hopefully, lots of our listeners will be taking advantage of these amazing tools and resources that you have.
Oh, thank you so much, Diana. I really appreciate this conversation. It was awesome. And yeah, I really, really, really hope that in the next few years, this starts to just pop off and people really start to feel the importance of what it means to play. Because I think people don't put play and authenticity together, but the number one prerogative of play is that it is self-led. And we need a little bit, not selfishness, right? But we need more practice in the arena of becoming the main agent of our lives. I think that's a really important thing that we're sort of missing right now. So I'm very excited about it. Thank you for the platform and the opportunity.
Thanks, Renee. Till next time. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Courage and Purpose. I hope today's insights inspired you to take bold action and align your life and career with what truly matters to you. If you're ready to dive deeper, I invite you to download my free Action Indicator Assessment, a powerful tool to help you uncover what's holding you back and take the next step towards clarity and confidence. Just visit www.lifeonpurpose.coach/action indicator to get started today. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who could use a little extra courage on their journey. Until next time, stay true to your purpose, lead with courage, and keep thriving. I'll see you in the next episode.